is a member of the Mice Chat Podcast Network. MicePod.com. Now, the podcast that's nearly the same as all the others.
Warning, this show contains childish adult content and is intended for mature audiences. Listener discretion is advised. The views spoken are ours and ours alone, not those of any other bugger. If you're easily offended, we strongly suggest finding another podcast. Everybody neat and pretty, then on with the show.
Please stand clear of the doors. Por favor, manténganse alejado de las puertas.
Let's put on the show.
Growing older is mandatory. Growing up is optional. Disafterdark, the podcast that's nearly the same as all the others.
Calm down. Oh, hello everyone. Welcome back to the Mouse's Head for Series 2, Episode 17, if I'm not mistaken. I'm Paul.
I'm Nick.
I'm Paul D.
And hello to our guest today.
Hi there, I'm Jim Hill.
Yes, because we had some feedback on iTunes. Lots of 5-star reviews, but we got a 2-star review back in January.
Well.
You see. And you'll like this one.
Okay.
We prepare feedback from everyone. And this one came from Randy Randy Leahy, I don't know. Basically, only worth listening to when Jim Hill is on. If you subscribe to any other Disney Parks podcast, open brackets, maybe one with a Disney British accent, close brackets, then this is pretty much superfluous. I could have looked that up in a dictionary, but I don't know. I'm just going to say thank you very much. I've never been called superfluous. It sounds a bit like super. Unless
no, exactly. It's got the word super in it.
It's got to be good.
Unless the marvellous Jim Hill is on, of course, I could listen to that man read the phone book out loud. So,
luckily.
So just for you, Jim,
phone book with his,
have a phone book.
There you go. Abercrombie A. God help us.
Gentlemen, before we wind you up and let him go, what are you drinking?
Okay.
You go on, Paul?
I got a bottle. I couldn't find a Disney-themed one, but I got a kind of holiday or good time-related one. I got a bottle of Boondoggle.
That's a great word. I'm going to write that in my book of new words I've learnt today, next to superfluous.
Cheers.
I wonder how many points it gets you in Scrabble.
Look, is it on a double word score or not? I don't know.
3 O's, 2 G's. Should be good.
Yeah.
Well, would you believe I had a Disney-themed beer? I say had because we kind of slightly got our show recording time wrong. So I'd already cracked open one. So I actually had a bottle of a beer called Big Bob in tribute to Bob Hoskins.
Yeah.
Or is Disney community known Eddie Valiant from Who Framed Roger Rabbit, who died the other week. So that was in tribute to him. Unfortunately, I'm now left with something that isn't, and it's Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, which is recommended to me by my good friend Stone Cold Steve Austin, who I've never actually met.
That wasn't $6 Million Man Steve Austin, was it?
No, but other Steve Austins are, of course, available.
Yeah.
I won't read the feedback that says, but the joke about other things are available is getting old.
Yeah, I saw that one.
We've ignored it.
Yes. I actually wrote that review.
That review is superfluous.
Jim, would you like a drink?
I'm actually sitting here with, what is this? This is vintage seltzer with lemon lime flavor, but God help me, it's sodium-free, calorie-free, taste-free. What the hell am I drinking this for? Just alcohol-free.
Glass.
Pretty much, really. Just I'm having air, gentlemen. So,
well, and I've just gone for a bottle or two of Bulmer's Black Cherry Cider. It is nice. I went on recommendations because I was in a bit of a hurry today. I didn't want to go down the shops and spend too long because Brighton had Derby to play today, and it would have been great if we'd have actually turned up. But this isn't a football podcast, so I'm not going to talk about it. Oh dear. Anyway, let's go straight into it. We don't do any news or anything this time because we've got Jim Hill with us. Yay!
That is the news.
Yeah. Where should we start?
Entirely up to you guys. I mean, it's been. I mean, you mentioned Bob Hoskins, you know, and it just, you know, I love that guy in everything, though. You know that's and there's so many great stories associated with him. I mean, do you know the one about the Untouchables?
I only found that story out, obviously on his passing. I've not heard that before, but for those that don't know, please go ahead.
Yeah.
Well, no, he was going to be in that film. He was going to play Al Capone, and you know, given all of the great gangsters that he played in the past in The Long Good Friday and you know the Cotton Club and that sort of thing, he would have been great at it. But at the very last minute, De Niro sort of raised his hand and sort of you know, I'll do it, but for this payday. And you know, the studio, I think it was Paramount that made the thing, was thinking, well, a movie with De Niro will make certainly more money than one with Bob Hoskins. And so, you know, so the director, Brian De Palma, had this really unfortunate moment of having to go to you know, Bob go, I'm really sorry, we've got, you know, this, you know, De Niro's willing to do it, so we'd like to buy you out. And Hoskins, on the other hand, just loved the whole thing. You know, just the notion, let me get this straight. I'm going to get paid my full amount of money, which I think was £35,000 for the role at the time. And, you know, just to not show up, to not do the costume fittings, to not have her hanging the set. And and he said, absolutely, you know, sure. And then turned to De Niro and says, if there are any other movies that you don't want me to appear in, please call any time. You know, just... But no, he was such a huge talent, and at the same time, I love his work in Roger Rabbit. Though it came at a price. Again, I think a few of the memorial pieces might have mentioned that he, in prepping for Roger Rabbit, he actually hung out with his daughter who had an invisible friend and saw how she interacted with this invisible friend, and you know, so that's how he went to the set and dealt with Roger. And he said the problem was about 10 days before they finished shooting, he began to see Roger. You know, it's just kind of out of the corner of his eye to the end of the sentence, like, could we wrap this up quickly? Because I think I need to go someplace else. I don't want to be Eddie Valiant for a while. You know,
it'd be okay if it was Jessica you were seeing.
Well, no, you see, now that's an entirely different situation. And I think a lot of us would like to see Jessica out of the corner of, well, any corner. Yeah. But no,
she hasn't got too many corners.
This is true. This is true. You know, in fact, oh God, this brings up an interesting thing. Disney has been going through its library, looking at films that it can do the 3D transition with. I mean, and we've seen a couple of them come forward. You know, that Lion King, that sort of thing. In fact, they entirely prepped The Little Mermaid for a 3D release. And the problem was that I guess that Lion King made a huge amount of money. Beauty and the Beast didn't make nearly as much as they expected. And they decided it was kind of diminishing returns, and that they thought, let's hold off, you know, because we know eventually 3D televisions will make it into the market. We can then sell these films at that time. But evidently they did do a test of Roger Rabbit, and they did do, you know, it's one of these things where it's like, you know, I want to see the Disney executive who justified this, but it was the Ink and Paint Club. And so, you know, here comes Jessica through the curtain, you know, through the curtain, and they did the full scene. And evidently it was the scene, could we see that one again? You know, just like, because, but at the same time, you have to understand, when you make these scenes, you know, when you do these things, they actually take each individual scene in the movie and treat it like a window. And, you know, say you're looking at the window of your house, and, you know, there's a tree in your yard that's 30 feet away, and there's a shrub that's 15 feet away, and there's a dog in the yard that's in between those 2 points. And that's literally how you have to plan out the scene, is you're translating into 3D. And so evidently the discussion was, okay, so Jessica's neck is 16 inches away. How close is the breast? And it was, you know... And it was one of these discussions where I think it's still like 10 inches away. It's like, no, that's not physically possible. It's just a rabbit. Come on. You know, and so lots of discussions about where exactly are we in the boobosphere right now? You know, it's just, is she close? Is she far away?
We're talking IMAX.
There we go. So no, in fact, you know, that IMAX would, you know, just caution you may be blinded by watching this film. But no, that test is out there, and hopefully someday we will see a 3D Roger Rabbit. But yeah, that again, Disney identified this as a brand new revenue stream, and then when it stopped making money or enough money to justify the translation costs, they stopped. And you know, to just sort of run off in a different direction here. That's why a lot of people at the studio are kind of like, yeah, I know Avatar 2 and 3 and the prequel are coming, but, you know, Avatar made, what was it, $4 billion worldwide or something to that effect, on the back that it was the first really good 3D movie. Yeah. And let's face it, you know, even... You know, I guess they've started pre-production now, but seriously, what the hell are they going to do? You know, I mean, with Avatar 2, 3, whatever, you know, because I don't, you know, we've all seen 3D movies at this point. We've all seen Avatar. I don't think this thing's going to do nearly the business, or the sequels and the prequel are nearly going to do the business, and Disney's kind of tied the whole future of Animal Kingdom to that franchise. Yeah. You know,
it's very odd when you think about it, because, you know, as we've mentioned before when talking about Avatar Land, you know, it's not a Disney franchise, so they've hedged all their bets on something that they don't have any kind of control over.
Well, but at the same time, that they honestly believe, given Cameron's track record, that you know, that it's a smart place to be in business with him. And more to the point, in fact, when you talk with the executives actually made this decision, it's like, look, yeah, we start in, you know, we're starting at Disney's Animal Kingdom in Florida, but we're going worldwide with this. This is, you know, this is phase 2 of Shanghai. They'll open Avatar Land there. The Brazil park, which
okay.
Well, you know, that one, actually, it's been kind of interesting. I'm sure, you know, you've been...
We'll come to that one in a minute, because that's a new one on me.
Well, no, the Disney, I mean, face it, if you've been to Walt Disney World and, you know, at certain times of a year, and suddenly someone with a flag goes walking by you and, you know, 1,300 people following them, and all of them then try to jump ahead of you in line, I mean, the Brazilians are a huge market for Disney. And, you know, in fact, I was talking with the folks for Harry Potter. They were doing the rollout of Diagon Alley, and it was fascinating. They actually took the 2 actors who play the Weasley brothers, and they sent one to Japan, and they sent one to Brazil, because these are, you know, 2 huge emerging markets for the company. And, you know, so same thing with Disney. It's just sort of like, that's, you know, where a lot of our visitors come from, and should we maybe start thinking about putting a park down there? And it's like, please tell me that the Brazilian economy is not going to collapse in the, you know, 5 years that it's going to take to build this thing. You know, because, you know, then it's like, I would like to bring my family into the park. That will be 1 goat, please. So, you know, and I don't. There you go.
A whole goat.
A whole goat, you know, and they give you 2 pygmy goats and change. I mean, you know, it's you know, so I don't know what to tell you. Those are the discussions that are held at the Bob Iger version of the Walt Disney Company. I mean, this is a guy who honestly believes in the international expansion of the company. That's just that announcement, a week to 10 days ago, like, you know, we changed our mind about Shanghai. We're throwing another $800 million at it. And it's like, okay, that's interesting. You know, but this was, anybody who's ever done business with the Chinese, and again, I don't say this to be offensive, but part of the budget for Shanghai Disneyland, 20% of the money that was set aside to build this park was set aside for graft. You know, just the notion of we're going to have to pay to make sure that things make it off the boat or make it to the work site, and evidently part of this, we need $800 million more, was we ran out of graft money. I'm sorry.
Yes, it's there, a line item in the budget as palm grease.
Absolutely. And the story I've always heard is that there is one executive within the Disney company whose job is exactly this. This is the person you go to who mans the safe or who mans the internet and moves the money around and throws into other people's accounts. But they're the person in charge of graft for the Shanghai Disney project. And they knew going into this that they were going to be dealing with some of the scariest people on the planet. And so just the whole notion of, look, once I finish this project, I want to retire. I want to go to some place where if this goes south, people can't find me. And it's like, absolutely. Okay, if you're the one watching the safe on, what is it, 2016 when this opens, we'll arrange to send you to the island they shot Lost on. Okay, and,
I wonder if a lack of greasing budget is the reason why Universal Studios Dubai is nothing but a Universal Studios Arch in the desert.
That's a very interesting question. I think it's Theme Park Tourist just recently ran a shot of, and again, it's an amazing photograph of the arch and the sea of sand that's behind it. I don't know the particulars of that project. I do know, for example, though, that Shanghai, the exact site that Shanghai Disneyland is being built on, was first surveyed, and the deal was negotiated, and Universal walked away from building a theme park resort in this exact spot. Disney was number 2. And I think, the Comcast guys, I think they just recognize that while, it's important to be in emerging markets, and they are having some very interesting discussions with the Russians, which I'm sure at this point they're not entirely happy that, Putin seems stable. Let's talk with him.
You'll need some grease money for that one.
Yeah.
Oh God, yeah. But they thought of the two that, that okay, let's go this route, and that bit them in the ass. But I think, in the case of Dubai, I mean, this was oil money. And remember, in 2008, when the economy shrank in the way it did, that suddenly they got nervous over there because they were developing this park for an emerging middle class that suddenly maybe wasn't emerging. And since then, clearly with what happened with Hogsmeade and Hogwarts Castle, and now, soon to come online Diagon Alley, Universal suddenly realizes, wow, there's a lot of money just to be made out of the 3 parks we already own. I mean, Universal Osaka's version of Potter opens up July 15th. And I want to credit Seth Kaversky with this story. He's the guy who works for the Orlando Weekly, but he had heard that out ahead of the opening of that park's version of Forbidden Journey, it turns out the Japanese are much more motion sensitive than we are in the West, and so what they have now done a softer, dumbed down version of Forbidden Journey. They were actually testing it in the Orlando facility, just to sort of see that, all right, do we still get the same sort of show value if we move gently through the scenes? And evidently they did, and so that one's opening in Osaka in just 2 months from now. So
I have to do a bit of research into that. Is it a full version of Hogsmeade?
It would appear to be so. That they've definitely got the castle. And if anything, given the Japanese secretary girl attitude toward retail, I mean, that's one of the reasons why it made sense to build Tokyo Disney Seas, the second gate, because you had this whole class of people who came to the park on a weekly basis. And, I mean, these are the people who were buying the Duffy, in fact, it's
the people.
Yeah.
Well, but it gets even stranger. I was actually talking with, Alan Zachary, who's the gentleman who wrote the music for Twice Upon a Time, the Cinderella story that's done on the boats. Likewise, he's the guy who just did the Zachary Levi Broadway musical First Date. And, we were talking about the various projects he's working on for different parks and that sort of thing. And he was explaining that he and his writing partner had just been hired to write a theme song for Duffy's girlfriend, Sadie. So, when Sadie appears on stage in Japan, she needs her own theme music, so people will get excited and buy her dolls. So that was literally, somebody said, we need a song. Get those guys in here. All right? Give us a nice upbeat number for the plush bear. So, and they did it.
So Sadie's coming.
Yep, Sadie's coming. So, again, all of you who, are bitching and moaning about Duffy right now, just wait. Sadie's on the way.
All
right? Yeah, that's right.
I don't know. I feel bad saying this because I know how this makes me look, and I have no interest in Duffy. But I do know that he has a lady friend called Shelley.
Shelley.
He's two-timing Sadie.
Could be.
That's
the bounder.
Okay, now
Dirty Duffy.
The thing is, let's be honest. Anyway, I mean, the thing is, if Shelley Bear has not been selling anywhere near enough units, then they are going to replace her. So. It's either lost in translation or
been dumped,
yeah. And that's possible. But
unless of course Shelley doesn't translate in Japanese.
Do you know we've had already?
Shelley? No, I think he's right. I'm looking at this thing. It says Shelley May, so I'm wondering. I wonder if
the thing is, Shelley doesn't exist in America.
Yeah, Shelley May, but Sadie did.
Well, hang on. Okay, we're not going down that road, guys.
Thank you, Jim.
All right. Well, I tell you what, I'm going to defer to your knowledge on this. If I'm getting the name wrong here, because what I may have done is crashed the two names together. Because if it's Shelley May, I may have I've got 5 working brain cells at this point in my life. So that's may be Sadie. I heard Shelley May and turned into Sadie, but either way, again, theme song for a bear's girlfriend, a plush bear's girlfriend. It's just like
I don't know how I feel actually, because on one hand, I've just potentially corrected the oracle of knowledge in Jim Hill, but at the same time, it's about Duffy's girlfriend. So while I'm rather pleased on one hand, I'm deeply, deeply ashamed on the other.
I mean, I'm actually hoping Jim's right, because even though they are in fact stuffed, even if they are stuffed bears, Sadie is a bit of a classier name than Shelley May. Sounds like she should be driving around in a pickup.
Yes. I hate to say this. I think the gentleman's right. I think Shelley May is the way to go. So, if you're talking about bragging rights in this situation, boy, are they small. But go ahead.
Just take them.
Just take them.
And Nick, you've got nothing to be ashamed of. You might know too much.
I have plenty to be ashamed of. But this bear thing isn't going to keep me up at night. Anyway, so
yes.
All right.
Jim, just going back to the Avatar piece, how much do you think the link between Disney and Avatar is now going to actually affect what's in the second and the third Avatars? How much is that going to influence what appears in the movie?
It's interesting you bring that up, because they have, they're committing, depending on who you talk to, this is $500 million or $600 million at the end. Because again, now they're talking, they want to have a certain amount of this open and then be able to open a second larger attraction, year and a half, 2 years after opening, to spur further attendance, that sort of thing.
Sort of like you watch the film and then you see something and you think, yeah, because that's a ride, isn't it, waiting to happen?
Well,
Gringotts springs to mind.
Yeah, well, that's but to be fair, let's face it, when you spend as much money to go into a park as you do these days, you want certain things. You want, that in fact, with the the Avatar ride, there was always about flying over the environment because flying had been such a big part of the first film. And, that's the interesting thing is supposedly what Cameron keeps pushing is that, look, we have as big or if not a bigger component related to water and underwater environments and the other tribes of the world coming for this next film. And so, they want to hold a little bit back because I guess in film 2, they have what they believe is the next ride. But but again, Cameron being Cameron, he doesn't want, I mean, think about it. Think about the level of security he wrapped around Titanic. All right?
It's not like you didn't even know the end of it.
Well, no, that's it exactly.
Don't spoil it for me.
Yeah, it's like, okay, so this ice, this big piece of ice covered with little blue people. That's what did it. That's what sank the boat. Just sort of like, but again, that's the sort of guy he is. He's a really protective storyteller of again, that's what kind of makes them a nice match, he and the Disney company. Because Disney, I mean, think about it right now. I mean, are you guys getting as inundated with the Maleficent advertising as we are here stateside? You can't open up with a cupboard without Angelina Jolie falling out.
Well, I saw the first television advert for it this evening.
Okay.
Other than that, all I've ever gotten is Facebook feeds for it. And probably the circles I move in more than anything.
We are definitely getting, as Paul said, more TV spots. Because I've seen a couple. We've seen a couple of trailers, and actually, this is one of the rare episodes of Disafterdark that my beloved wife might actually listen to, because she loves hearing you, Jim. And my wife is a massive fan of Maleficent and has been looking forward to this for ages and loved you talking about it on when you come on the show last year. But there's one thing that she's been seeing from the trailers and TV spots that she would like to see if you could clear up.
Okay.
Based on your so far knowledge. And that is the three fairies, the three fairy godmothers.
Yep.
Now, from what I've read and seen, there's three pixies, but they're not actually the fairy godmothers from the cartoon we know. So, what's the story?
Well, if you've seen the ad where Maleficent makes her entrance, and you have the blue, the green, and the red, the pixie hanging out of the thing. That's Flora, Fauna, and Merryweather. I mean, in this story, they're not identified like that. In fact, this. I think we talked about this the last show. This is Disney's Wicked. All right, this is the Wicked Wizard or the Wicked Witch of the West. Her story told from a slightly different angle, so you have great sympathy for her. And in fact, that's one of the again. I think we talked about this on the last show that I don't want to Frank Hill this movie for a lot of people. So just if you really want to know about Maleficent or want to go in cold, you're going to walk away, turn off the podcast for a while or jump forward or whatever the hell you want to do. Because, the whole gimmick of this, I mean, think about that moment in the story. All right, you have, King Stefan, his daughter's been cursed. They burned all of the, the spinning wheels. And again, to save their daughter, to protect her for, the 16 years till her 16th birthday, they send her off in the care of these fairies who've never taken care of a child before. All right. And the only moment in the movie they kind of acknowledge that this bunch are very inept is the whole cake baking sequence and how they're making the address and they haven't been able to use their wands or, that sort of thing. That's the only hint of that they're really terrible at child upbringing. So now just back that up. Just the notion of, here, you go take care of this child. All right. And for 16 years, these two or these three that have no experience in dealing with human children are supposed to be raising this princess. And so the gimmick of Maleficent is, she finds out where Aurora is like day 2. right? It's one of these things where, and and then she realizes, oh crap, I said 16 years. Ugh. So I can't kill her now. I gotta, and more to the point, she's watching these three inept fairies deal with this child, and they do things like in fact, in a couple of the trailers you can see images where, for example, they have Aurora as a small kid rushing toward the edge of a cliff, or just playing alongside a roaring river or that sort of thing. And Maleficent ends up basically being this detached babysitter. I mean, she'll go every day, and because the fairies aren't paying attention to Aurora, she'll pay attention to Aurora, and she actually has to step in and divert her from going off of the cliff, or if she falls in the river, she has to put her staff out and that sort of thing. And there's this really great scene in the original screenplay for this thing where, in fact, they use a lot of this moment in the trailer. It's like, I know you're there, come out, and, don't be afraid. And it's like, well, if I come out, then you'll be afraid. But it's just like, there's this line that comes after that. Well, who do you think I am? And it's like, well, it's obvious, isn't it? You're my fairy godmother. And, it's one of these things where for Maleficent, who's actually very begrudgingly begun to care for this kid that she's been watching over all these years, to have her say something that's that open and that sweet really undoes her. Mm. And that's the other thing of this. There's about 30 minutes of story up front, where, I mean, you've probably seen the images from the ads where it's Maleficent with wings. And more to the point, it's Maleficent with wings but no horns. Mm. And, that she's a halfling. She's half fairy and half something else, which you eventually find out that her father wasn't human. Her father was Satan. And so she has a choice between her two natures. She can be the ultimate evil, or she can be decent. And this is what this film really is about. When you have two warring natures in you, and more to the point, King Stefan. You meet him. He's actually Maleficent's friend. He's also a halfling. He's half human and half fairy. So they actually have a relationship in the first 30 minutes of the movie. And Stefan, to go from being a commoner to the king, sells out the fairy realm. Mm. I mean, there's a lot to this story. It's a very well written. Mind you, again, I've only seen the first draft of the script. There's been a bunch of rewrites since. A lot of the battle footage of the trees and the trolls and that sort of thing certainly wasn't in the draft that I read. But there's a huge potential for this greatly entertaining film that reimagines Maleficent. And again, Disney really does seem to think that they have a hit on their hands here, but in a very weird sort of way. I was talking with somebody in consumer products, and evidently the plan is that not a whole lot of merch, as the movie launches, because they don't want to give anything away. Mm. But come Halloween 2014, the stores are going to be filled with Maleficent costumes for all of the younger girls and the preteens who want to be the misunderstood, mistress of all evil, and, want to go out and play this character. But Disney honestly hopes that this will, in fact, be their Wicked. In fact, my understanding is they've already tossed the script over to the folks at Disney Theatrical, who, even as we speak, are working with the folks who did Frozen about the Broadway musical version of this. And they're like, what would it be like to musicalize this? And it's like, okay, we'll try to find somebody. But yeah.
They've done this already, though. I mean, they're Wicked. They did in book form a few years ago. They did for those that haven't seen, there's a book out there, I believe, called Fairest of Them All, off the top of my head, which was the Snow White equivalent of this, which was very much their Wicked. I think, my wife's big theory is just that in what we've seen so far in the footage, and again, it's only trailers and TV spots, is the pixies or fairies look very young. And obviously in the cartoon, the fairy godmothers are the same, quite old in appearance. And I think she's so desperate. She's been so desperate for it to be good for so long that now, as it's coming up to release, she's getting slightly panicky. It could be another Oz.
Well, I mean, and the weird thing is, I actually got the script for this at the exact same time I got Oz, and I don't know. I mean, I'm honestly more of a fan of Oz the Great and Powerful than a lot of people are, but I do also know, the original casting was Robert Downey Jr. They wanted him to play the flawed, guy, the guy who eventually became good, and then when he passed on that, he also passed on. Actually, he worked on Peabody and Sherman for a couple of months before walking out of that. Their go-to guy after that was Depp, and Depp looked at it, and it's like, this is nice, and but I like the original Wizard of Oz too much to muck around in this. So Franco was number 3. And Franco got it because Raimi had enjoyed working with him on the Spider-Man movies. So it's like, I know whatever ridiculous thing I ask this guy to do, he'll do. So, I mean...
To be honest, I think, unlike a lot of people, I think actually the biggest problem with Oz wasn't actually Franco, was actually Raimi. I don't know. I just don't think it hit the notes it should have done. I think the beginning of the film in black and white was majestic. I really think that was very, very well done, and great use of 3D there as well. But once it actually got to Oz, it just kind of lost it for me. And if anything, it should be the opposite. But, well, that's me.
Well, no, it's funny you bring that up because which of the Evil Dead Army of Darkness? There's a lot of people who actually, in fact, I forget which guy online actually took the two movies and laid them side by sides, and the plot points, the major plot points for both films are startlingly, line up, and it's just sort of like, oh, okay, So this is, to Sam, it's like
family-friendly version of the Evil Dead.
Yeah, there you go. Or, you got to do it with a really big budget in Detroit, so it's like, I don't know. I'll have to, look at that cold-bloodedly someday.
Nick, you alluded to the fairest of them all in book form, but with that and then Maleficent coming out, do we think there's a whole new genre of Disney backstories coming out?
Oh, dear Lord. Yeah, actually, for example, you might have seen the announcement, just last week about they're doing this thing for the Disney Channel called Descendants, where, in fact, it's the guy, High School Musical. Why am I blanking his name? The director.
Kenny Ortega?
There we go. Kenny Ortega is doing this, but you've got, it's the son of Jafar. It's basically moving, doing this as high school. That just the notion of, that you have the teenage sons and daughters of all the Disney, baddies and princesses, that sort of thing, are all, they're all at the same prep school. So it's like, oh, of course, that makes perfect sense. And so, the son of Jafar, you've got, Evie, the daughter of the evil queen, Cruella de Vil's son, Carlos, the Ben.
Carlos de Vil.
Carlos de Vil, just
Carlos de Vil. Carlos de Vil. That's why.
At some point, does someone shout, "Don't tell him, Carlos"?
But the thing is, has no one told Disney Channel Creative that there's a show like this already on ABC called Once Upon a Time? Because it sounds very similar to me.
And it gets so much worse because at Toy Fair, this is the big. Every February in New York, they have this event for all of the toy companies.
I know Toy Fair.
Okay. Nancy and I were in the Mattel Pavilion, and seriously, they take over like the third floor of the building. And they have this entire line of toys and videos that, this exact story. It's just the whole notion of, in fact, I want to say it's basically Maleficent's daughter goes to school. But the whole notion is, what if you're a bad person who doesn't want to be bad? And, but everybody expects you to fill that role. And as you just said, that the notion of that we've got the show on ABC, and I remember talking with the two gentlemen just before it launched, and they explained there's an entire department at Disney where it's all about how are you going to use our characters. And, in fact, they had, in the pilot, there's this moment where the evil queen sweeps into Snow White and Prince Charming's wedding, and Snow White lifts up a sword and goes to do battle with the evil queen. And there was like 2 days of meetings like, Snow White has never picked up a sword before. Can we do that? And just sort of like, and just the whole notion of, and somebody had to go get them Danish and coffee because, and this is going to take all day. And it just like, I don't know, Snow White, I've seen her make pies,
Someone watched far too much Snow White and the Huntsman.
Yeah. Actually, I think it predated it, actually.
And to bring this full circle, that was Bob Hoskins' last role.
It was indeed, yes.
Just as one of the seven dwarfs, which, in fact, it's, and again, to make this even weirder, Joe Roth, the producer of Snow White and the Huntsman, is also the guy who produced Oz the Great and Powerful and is also producing Maleficent. And again, to throw even a weirder spin on this, he's the guy who also produced $1 Million Arm, which is coming out here stateside shortly. But 2 weeks later, a Joe Roth film released by Disney is followed by another Joe Roth film released by Disney, Maleficent. So,
for those that don't know, just because I'm not sure when the UK release is, I've not actually seen one, but $1 Million Arm is, for our UK listeners, is a baseball film. A true life baseball film, isn't it? Actually,
yeah.
And
actually,
it stars John Hamm from TV's Mad Men. It's normally how they kind of promote him. Who's a great actor. It's had very good write-ups already. I know it comes out in the 18th, I think, 18th May, something like that. But yeah, I'm not sure when it's coming out in the UK, but it's supposed to be the big family fun sports hit. So. I'm guessing it'll be along the lines of like the blind side of the game plan or something.
If it doesn't hit the British crowds and they go, baseball? What's that? Isn't it like rounders?
But it does feature some cricket, I believe.
Oh, that's all right.
So,
it does. I actually got to see a press screening about 10 days ago, and and then got to talk with Suraj Sharma, the I think he's the kid who did a Slumdog Millionaire, and Madhar Ahmed, I believe is the name of the kid from Life of Pi. And again, they were just talking about the fact that they basically got tapped to do this film about 4 or 5 weeks before they began shooting in Mumbai, and then they had to come stateside to LA, and they did a lot of the athletic scenes down in Atlanta, and it's just the sort of notion of and the two gentlemen who actually Raiku Sinj, and I'm blanking the name of the other gentleman, but basically Dinesh, they had 6 weeks to get ready to pretend that they were track stars, because that's the other weird bend in the story. They went over the $1 Million Arm competition, went to India thinking that they could take a cricket someone who pitches the cricket ball and could turn them into a base bowler, and turn them into a baseball pitcher. And ironically, the two people who won the competition had never played cricket, but they had thrown javelin, and evidently there was enough of sort of a muscle memory thing between throwing a baseball and throwing a javelin that they could translate. But again, 6 weeks to be in good enough athletic shape to look like this, and also to learn these skills, and just they just described how how miserable it was to have to go to work 3, 4, 5 hours a day, so they could at least on camera look decent. And then the irony is, for the first part of the movie, they have to look miserable at baseball. So they said as an acting challenge, it was this whole series of weird hoops that all right, these are the scenes you look terrible, so forget all the training that we just did for the 5 or 6 weeks, and then you got to turn around and 10 minutes later, okay, we got that, now you got to be great. And it's like, oh Christ. So but yeah, they did a nice job, and it'll just be interesting to see. It's so often with these films, it's like, did you get the right weekend? Do you have the right advertising campaign? Did you, how, just so many things the success of a movie are tied to so many things that have nothing to do with the movie. God help you if you end up in a situation like, for example, here stateside, the Muppets Most Wanted ended up, losing, a good portion of its business here in the States, because it turns out that people had gone to see the Lego movie, had really loved it, and went and told their friends. And so it's like, the weekend the Muppets debut, everybody's still going to Lego. Based on word of mouth, which, doesn't happen anymore. But it happened here.
Although, to be fair, having gone to see it, and I think I've upset Joshua Gillespie. That's why he's not talking to me anymore. I didn't think the Muppets Most Wanted was quite as good as the previous Muppet movie. It was still good, but just yeah. And all this Disney movie news, and still no Tron 3. So. Makes me an angry boy.
I was going to completely change that now and throw in my obscure segue.
Okay.
We've alluded to Bob Hoskins being one of the dwarfs.
Yep.
And since the last time we spoke, they've got a new mine train.
That's woo! Good
what
segue.
A segue.
Wait, what a...
I'm taking a bow on radio. It doesn't work.
That's he stuck the landing, ladies and gentlemen. He had to be able to jump from that section to the other one. Woo! Okay, Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. Yeah, was down there for the press opening. Did get to talk with the ride folks, and had done. I've been sort of tracking this one for the 4 years it's been going on, and in fact, that's basically been the largest complaint in the fan community about this ride is that. Now, wait a minute. This is. They've been building New Fantasyland. They announced it in September of 2009, and this is finally the last piece opening. In May of 2014. Damn near 5 years, and it's like, why did it take so long to build this ride? And well, part of the problem was that this wasn't the ride. When they announced those plans back in 2009, if you remember, in the middle of that proposed New Fantasyland, there was this giant meet and greet structure where on one side, again, full, it's just going back, changing something. We had the Sleeping Beauty meet and greet where you were actually there with, what is it? Merryweather,
Fauna.
There we go. Flora, Fauna, and Merryweather, who were prepping for, her birthday. And so you're there at that moment, and then she comes in, and you have this wonderful moment with her. And on the other side of the building was the Tremaine Chateau, where, you went through the queue and you eventually came out in the backyard. And here is, the moment from that movie where Cinderella is, bent over the bench weeping because she can't go to the ball and her dress is torn. And then the fairy godmother appears, whips her wand around, Cinderella spins twice, and in front of you she transforms from rags to the blue ball gown. And I remember talking with the Imagineer who'd worked this all up, and he said, the great thing is that you're watching her spin. At no time are you watching the bench as it eats all of her rags, sort of, and pulls that off of her, so you can see the blue dress that she's been in the whole time. But yeah, that was all part of the opening. But in November of 2009, Iger, because he was still, in the middle of doing his version of America's. American Idol, as in, well, who will be my new, second in command? And so he decides, let's mix things up. We'll take Jay Rizzullo, who's my head of parks and resorts, and Tom Staggs, who's my CFO, and we'll have them switch jobs so they can both get experience in another part of the company. And, it'll be one of these two gentlemen who I will eventually select to be in charge of the company. And so Staggs, Rizzullo had set up the original version of New Fantasyland. Staggs, starting in January, is learning the job, goes through a series of meetings where everybody brings him up to speed about various projects, and he's finishing the New Fantasyland presentation. And at that point, he turns to the Imagineers and, guys, this is all great. Can't wait to see the building. One question, though, is there anything that you want to show me that didn't make the final plan? And there's this, real tension in the room, and they eventually, there is one thing. And they eventually tell him the story of where New Fantasyland came from. And what really happened was that, they were thinking 20,000 Leagues had closed in what, 97, 98, I think. Maybe it might have been, actually 96. I mean, it had been closed for years at this point. And so it's the early 2000s. They're looking at this giant empty piece of land in the middle of the Magic Kingdom, and the big complaint was that there's no kinetics. I mean, you walk through this area, and it used to be the subs were moving back and forth, and people were getting in line, and there was a lot of energy, there was a lot of, excitement, and now there's just this big empty pond. And so they began thinking, well, what could we put in there that would have some kinetics, what would have some energy? And, at the same time, it's just sort of going through the list of various Disney properties, and, they were also dealing with what they viewed as a land crunch, that they only had so much room in the Magic Kingdom to put new rides in, especially in Fantasyland, which was the most popular land in the park, and that's their most popular theme park. So it's like, we really should create more here. And it was this interesting twofer. I mean, the idea was that, well, wait a minute. If we shut down Snow White's Scary Adventures, and we then change that into a ride, a roller coaster kind of a ride, built around the dwarfs and their mines, we then have that show building. And this was just at the point where Disney Princesses was becoming this monstrous phenomenon. And so this is this part of the story nobody ever talks about, that was where, God help me, this is true, guys, the Disney Princess ride was supposed to go. All right. And they were going to use the exact same ride track as Snow White's Scary Adventure. Only the difference is you were just going to go from realm to realm, and in each realm there would be a Disney princess like, oh, hello, I didn't see you there. Oh, hello, welcome to my kingdom. And, that they were going to have, your moment with Cinderella, your moment with Sleeping Beauty, your moment with Jasmine, and then coincidentally dump you into a store full of princess crap. And that honestly was the thing that most excited the Disney executives. It's like, all right, we're going to, we're going to get all these little girls excited about princesses, and inside of 60 seconds throw them into a store full of princess crap, and they'll just buy everything. And so the thrill ride, the snow, they don't call it a thrill. Well, they don't call it a thrill ride out. It's always a family thrill ride or a family coaster. That was almost the we'll do that. But oh my God, this is the Princess ride. And then over years, the plan just kept mutating and mutating and mutating. So then it's suddenly, well, why do one princess ride when we could have, they could eat with Belle, they could ride with Ariel, they could meet with Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty, and, so on and so forth. And so the weird part is the thing that started the project, the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, totally pushed off the table. They just stopped talking about it at this point. And so they show it to Stags, and God love him, he doesn't have daughters, he has 3 little boys. And in much the same tradition as what happened with Breck Eisner, when Eisner had been on the job maybe 10 days, 2 weeks when he first went over to Imagineering, but he was so busy at that time in 1984, the fall of 84, that the only time he had to go over to Imagineering was a Saturday morning. And so, everybody's there for, here comes the new boss. And, he brings his son Breck with him, because they're going to go to, I guess, a softball game or something, or a Little League game immediately after this walkthrough. And, Breck is like any other kid. It's like, oh, God, I am so bored. My dad had dragged me to this thing, and can we please be out of here? And they take him into the model shop, and everybody, because they're Imagineers and they all have their pet projects, and pushed their favorite projects to the front. And Breck is wandering away because, everybody is just fawning all over his dad and pointing out the crap they want to get built. And Breck wanders away and ends up at the back of the hall and goes, hey, Dad, look at this. And it's the model for the ride that was then known as Zippity-Doo-Dah Run, which now is known as Splash. And he's like, Dad, look at this. This is cool. This is a flume ride. It's like, I don't want that stupid space pavilion. Look at this. So we ended up with that attraction because Breck Eisner got bored and wandered away. And in much the same way, we ended up with Seven Dwarfs Mine Train because Tom Staggs has 3 boys and came home with they're thinking of doing this meet and greet with, Sleeping Beauty and Cinderella. Or what about this mine train thing? It's like, oh, Dad, the mine train, please. So, but again, the problem was that the ship had sailed. They had done the survey work, the conduit was in, the electrical, the plumbing, and so these poor guys, as everything else is moving forward, have to, tear up their plans for the giant show building of Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty and figure out how to shoehorn this coaster in. They do pull it off, but it comes at a huge price because they made a decision that, okay, so we'll get everything else built, and then we'll just throw a fence up around Sleeping Beauty, Snow White, and then we'll build that behind the construction fence. And I remember talking with the project engineer and said, I got to talk with them on basically as they were opening the first phase of New Fantasyland, and the poor guy was talking about, well, we just lost our construction umbilicus. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the term, an umbilicus is that piece that would, from the backstage to the front of the house, that they could move steel and concrete through while people are in the park. But because they'd now made the decision, well, we want that walkway open all the way from Gaston's Tavern all the way on to Storybook Circus, that meant every day, whatever they had to work with had to come into the work site be behind the fence, closed off, before the first guest came in. And when you think about it, given how many people get into, early entry into the park, or how many times the Magic Kingdom is open till 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. I mean, these guys, there's a reason it took this long to get built. They just, they couldn't get the supplies in there. And then a really interesting bend on the story about 2 years in. So we're talking 2012 or thereabouts, early 2012. And they're looking, they're looking at the models, and they're looking at the AA figures they're going to do with the dwarves. And this is all going to be next-gen stuff. They're going to move really fluidly. But honestly, these are animated figures. These are based on the figures or the characters from the 37 film, and you can sculpt them to look as close as you want to the original dwarves. But at the same time, there's only so much a servo that's underneath a piece of plastic can do. You can't make the faces move like they did in the movie, but they had been developing this technology that sort of took its. If you've ever been on Buzz Lightyear Space Ranger Spin and seen that Buzz in the queue that has the projected face, and then if you've been into Storytime with Belle, there's the Lumiere, whose eyes and the upper lip are projected. And it's like, we can take that technology and we can put it inside of each of the dwarves' heads that can basically use a projector that's the size of a lipstick, and we can use a technology that allows us to digitally map the inside of the face. So, it's not a question of when they turn on the projector, you suddenly have Doc's eyeballs coming out of his cheek. That they're exactly where they need to be in the face every day. In fact, there's a test they do every morning for like 3 seconds that sort of zeroes the projectors into place, and then they go. But they mocked this up with a couple of other characters to show Stags, and he came in and saw it and said, "Oh, we have to do this. That's a go." So 24 months out, suddenly they go from traditional audio animatronic figures to these brand new projected face ones, which I'll tell you, having ridden the thing, I did it once in the afternoon and then like 6 times during the press party. It's amazing at certain light conditions. In fact, I want to caution you guys that if you when you get over stateside and do ride this ride, you want to be getting into the queue probably at dusk, because you want to be riding this thing with enough light so you can see. And in fact, you want to bring one fat friend along with you. Let me say that right up front. All right, because the orc cars do in fact swing. But if you're riding on this thing with Brazilian models, you're just not getting the full effect. All right, you have to bring.
If I'm riding it with Brazilian models, Jim, I'm not looking at the animatronics.
Well, there you go. All right. More to the point, if you're there with Brazilian models, what the hell are you doing in a theme park? Why did you leave the hotel room?
I'm assuming we're talking about female Brazilian models here, but hey.
Well, yeah, I'm not one to judge. But anyway, yes, bring your fat friend Frank on this ride, because when you go through these curves, and the way this thing hugs the ground is amazing. They do, in fact, the cars really do swing, but you need weight in the car for the full effect. There we go. But when you finally get into the cavern, and at dusk, and you've got, it's dark enough at both ends. You get the dwarves look amazing. They really do. In fact, if you've seen the video of them and they look kind of underwhelming, it's like that's because somebody's thrown on, an external light, that's in the darkness, in the way this is originally lit. It is stunning, and that coupled with the fact that when you go up the ride hill or the load hill at the end of the ride, the silhouettes of the dwarves that are marching next to you are so much clearer and so obviously modeled after what's done in the film. Which brings me to the one problem, and in fact I just found out about this yesterday, that the UV light that's in this thing. All right, the way they painted the gems and the beams and everything in the central mining scene. It looks spectacular now, but it only holds... This paint fades after 6 months, which means it's going to be up to the people at Walt Disney World, to actually maintain this thing. And I don't want to say Yeti, but, just... You understand that it's... so it's one of these things where it's like you're relying on the people on Disney's maintenance staffs to make sure this thing looks as good as it does right now. And God, I hope that they actually do it, because it really is. It's not an e-ticket, not by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a D with a lot of charm. And they seem very happy with it, because it's already they're already planning on having it travel. I think it's going to Shanghai next, and I guess Paris after that, and then we'll see what happens after that. But it's I won't say it's worth the wait. I still think that Disney needs to speed up, especially in comparison to what goes on with Universal. The guys at Comcast will turn on the money fire hose in a heartbeat. Whereas Disney is a company that loves to have meetings, and which is why something that probably maybe should have taken 2 years to build took 4.5. But there you go.
I know. Well, we're stuck to our radio length, and the barman has called time, gentlemen, please.
Oh, what?
I know. Like our 2-star review, we could listen to Jim all night, and we've planned another Jim Hill section where we're going to ask our listeners to ask you questions.
23 blue. Let's see, 8.5 inches wide. There we go. Okay.
Brilliant. On that note, gentlemen and dear listeners, thank you very much, and we shall see you in a fortnight's time.
Yes. Good night.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, guys.
Great fun. Always enjoy doing the show, guys.
Growing older is mandatory. Growing up is optional. Disafterdark, the podcast that's nearly the same as all the others.
Oh, he fades out gently like a professional.